long story short, emissions in BC keep on going up, even though they have the highest carbon taxes. Why is that? Well, I think the simple answer is that people need to eat, they need to heat, and they need to move around.
You're listening to the Canadian Taxpayers Podcast. I'm Franco Terrazzano, holding the fort down here in Ottawa for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Miss Chris Sims, out there in Alberta. Let's get right into it, because we got a lot to cover today, and the cost of living is top of mind for us all. You have the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Pierre Poilievre. He's calling on the government to stop its carbon tax hikes. They brought forward a motion to end the carbon tax hikes. Unfortunately, the government voted that down. You know, lots of hot air all the time here in Ottawa, especially right now. But Chris, why don't you break down for our listeners just what's going on?
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of hot air, a lot of rhetoric, but there's real people and real money behind this. So when the leader of the opposition stands up and says, hey, you know, folks can't afford jack right now, you guys need to do something about it, this is what he's getting at. So we're going to go through the numbers for you just on the first carbon tax. So the federal carbon tax here in Canada applies to things like gasoline, diesel, propane, natural gas, and furnace oil. Okay? So roughly speaking, every time you get in your car and drive somewhere, or every time you heat your home, more or less, you're paying the carbon tax. Right now, it's $50 per ton federally. It's going to go up $15 per ton, and eventually it's going to hit $170 per ton in the year 2030. Now, I can just see eyes glazing over everywhere, because what the heck does any of that mean? So in normal people talk, the carbon tax right now costs you 11 cents per liter of gasoline and 13 cents per liter of diesel. Now, what does that mean to the pump? Okay, well, if you drive, say, a Dodge Grand Caravan, it's like one of the most popular minivans on planet Earth, it costs you more than $8 extra just to fill up your minivan, just in that one carbon tax. If you're filling up a pickup truck, even a light-duty pickup truck, that's running you like $13 extra per fill-up, just in the carbon tax. Now, if you've got both those vehicles in your family, that's more than $20 every week, right? So that's serious money. Like, I can get a roast chicken and 2 jugs of milk for the amount that the carbon tax costs. Now, keep in mind, even if, like, say you're a magical person and you don't drive a minivan or a pickup truck, well, you're still getting nailed with the carbon tax, because if our listeners and viewers, like, stop what they're doing and look around them, like right now, pretty much everything around them has been brought to them on a truck. And everything they eat has been brought to the grocery store locally by a truck. And of course, trucks, those big rig ones, they use diesel and they have carbon taxes. So that is typically why people refer to the carbon tax as the tax on everything. And so if you were to fill up 2 of those cylinders on a big rig truck, that costs $120 extra just in the carbon tax every time they do that. So that increases the cost. And this is actually something that a lot of folks haven't pointed out before, but it's true. Trains. We still get a lot of stuff hauled across Canada using trains, locomotive power. And most trains use diesel. Guess what? They get the carbon tax too. And I sat down and did the math the other night, and it costs around $2,400 in the carbon tax every time you fill up one of those locomotives. So it all adds up.
And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry. We're not paying Chris overtime to sit there at 9 o'clock at night calculating how much the carbon tax is going to cost a locomotive. No, that's something that Miss Sims likes to do for fun.
I just like doing it. So.
Now, Chris, you mentioned that the carbon tax is the tax on everything. You know, it's starting to get a little chilly outside. It's pumpkin spice latte season. It's sweater weather. And you know what also comes with this time of year? It comes time to heat our homes, right? Natural gas. So why don't you break down how the carbon tax not only eats away at our wallets when we go to the pumps, but also costs us more to actually heat our homes during these fall and winter months?
Yeah, and this is why I think people really need to realize that they're getting, it's like death by a thousand cuts, right? Or one of our supporters once wrote to us this week, and they said, it's as if I'm in a little rubber boat, and every single tax hike and tax bite is like a pinprick in that rubber boat, and eventually I'm gonna sink. And so this is where we really need to get it through to people, especially politicians who make up these dumb laws, that these taxes layered on top of each other really hurt people. So they're going to nail you when you drive around. They're going to nail you when you buy groceries or anything you need to. And they're nailing you for heating your home. So right now it costs 9.8 cents per cubic meter of natural gas. That's what the current carbon tax rate is. It's also 7.7 cents per liter of propane. And lots of folks actually still use propane. Quite often they'll be in an inaccessible area, maybe it's rural, something like that, it's an older home, whatnot. They still get those big tanks filled. So that adds up. And there's still folks who are on furnace oil. Back home in the Maritimes, they'll call it heating oil. That's 15.9 cents per liter. So again, the carbon tax hits natural gas, propane, and furnace oil. So for example, okay, let's give a real person example. A family sent us their bill from February of last year. It was for propane to heat their home. They bought 1,000 liters of propane. That cost them $77 just in the carbon tax. Okay, another example for you. A household in Saskatoon. They sent us their natural gas bill. I took a look at it myself. And it was just for heating for one winter month. I think it was for the month of February in Saskatoon. They used just over 1,000 cubic meters of natural gas. That was in just under a month. The carbon tax alone on that bill, Franco, was $105. And it's just for that month. You got to figure if that's cutting into like your grocery budget or another budget, like that's really starting to hurt. And actually, it was a family I was surprised to see. They were in Ottawa. And they were still using furnace oil. I think they were an elderly couple. And they have to order fill-ups for their furnace oil. I think they have a small tank. They have to order it every 2 weeks in the dead of winter. And they got just over 220 liters delivered to them one time, and they sent me the bill. It cost them $35 in the carbon tax just for that 1-2 week delivery. And I sat there and I did the math. If let's just say you're just calculating from December to March. Okay, I'm not even counting like the colder times right now. Just December to March, that's costing them more than $280 just to heat their home, just in the carbon tax. That's not even touching the cost of their fuel, delivery, whatnot. So it's a big bite.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I want to transition back to something we talked about off the top, because we saw the Conservatives, we saw Mr. Poilievre call on the government to stop its carbon tax hikes. We've really seen the opposition increase the pressure to stop these tax hikes. And I think that's because our supporters have really been piling it on all politicians to stop these tax hikes. So kudos to our supporters. Let's keep on them. But Chris, we heard the opposition say stop the tax hikes. But you know what? I heard the Liberal ministers, Liberal members of Parliament in the House of Commons on social media and in the media say, well, hold on a second. You're not talking about the rebates. Like, they're claiming that after the rebates, some families are going to be better off. But Chris, I want you to tell us what's the real math behind the carbon tax and rebate schemes.
Yeah, for sure. I was really looking forward to that time because every time, if you're a political nerd, anytime there's a new leader that's in the House, you want to see them go head to head. You want to see what they're going to bring to the arena, right? And so I was actually watching that QP, and yeah, you're right. The opposition were like talking about taxes and affordability and all this stuff, and the government stood up, and they said, "Oh, they're going to get back more than they pay in." And I actually yelled at the TV. I haven't done that in a while, and I yelled at the TV. That is not true. Your own numbers show it's not true. So what we mean by that is, okay, number one, anybody with any common sense listening right now understands that it's basically impossible through the laws of physics and math to give the government money and to have them magically create more money to give back to you. So that's just not happening. But the actual math was done by the parliamentary budget officer. And lo and behold, you're not getting more back than you pay in.
Surprise.
The reports, right? The report's right there. The data is right there. You can take a look on our website at taxpayer.com. We have a link directly to their report, and we do our own analysis too. And to give you an idea, the PBO did a deep dive on this. They just didn't skim what's happening at the pumps and then kind of do the calculation. No. They did the pumps, they did home heating, and they did other elements in the economy, which is what we were just talking about. The layering on effect of trucking, train, all that stuff. And turns out, yeah, people are still out at the end of the year. And to give you an example, Alberta, here in Alberta, they're getting kicked in the teeth the hardest. Actually, a family is about $670
Mhm.
poorer after paying the carbon tax and after the rebates every year. So this whole idea that you get more than you pay in is just fundamentally untrue. That is mathematically untrue. The Parliamentary Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan, arm's-length office that does this sort of calculation, has proven that is not true. So they should really stop saying that in the House of Commons. And two, I can hear my listeners from BC right now yelling. BC is a special case. One, they've got two carbon taxes. They went out on their own back in 2008 and they started the carbon tax scheme here in North America. They now have two carbon taxes. They pay through the nose. And their rebate scheme is even worse because the moment a two-person working family in British Columbia earns just over $59,000 a year, they get zero back in rebates in British Columbia. So like the average median income in British Columbia for a working family is like $84,000. So average people are not getting jack back in British Columbia when it comes to rebates. So I think we really need to put this thing to bed, put a stake through its heart. The rebate thing just is not working for people.
Okay, let's do a little bit of rapid fire ish, and let's stay on BC because it's like the birthplace of Canada's bad carbon tax idea. First, BC has had the highest carbon tax in Canada for quite some time. What's going on there with emissions?
Emissions just keep on going up. If you take a look at the data previous to when everybody was locked in their homes, it had gone up in 5 of the past 7 years. It had gone up just over 10% over the previous 3. So if you can take it, this is the government's own data, okay? This is their own data that they bury deep on their website through this massive Excel sheet. You can take a look at the emissions data yourself. It just keeps on going up on a constant trajectory, even though they have the highest carbon taxes in North America and have done so since the year 2008. So long story short, emissions in BC keep on going up, even though they have the highest carbon taxes. Why is that? Well, I think the simple answer is that people need to eat, they need to heat, and they need to move around. So the demand on that energy is inelastic, to borrow one of your economist terms. I thought you'd like that. So that is why it just keeps on going up. And two, you're right, they do have 2 carbon taxes. And unfortunately, it's eventually going to be inflicted on the rest of us across Canada.
So can you break down what the second carbon tax is and how much it costs?
Yeah, it's going to be a doozy. In British Columbia right now, because it's an average, okay? It changes, I think it's every 2 weeks that the average changes because they have to go on this international market and bid on all of this stuff. It varies between 16, 17, sometimes up to 18 cents. So for argument's sake, on the conservative side, let's just say it's 16 cents a liter on average for gasoline. It's more for diesel. I think right now it's 18 cents per liter for diesel. And what it is it's a fuel standard. It's a government fuel standard where the government of British Columbia has said, okay, Scouts Honor, we're now in the carbon market. Okay, we are in the international carbon market. This is the way of the future, people. And we're going to basically make producers of oil and gas have lower carbon content in their product. And if they don't somehow, technically, magically not be able to get it done, they're then charged for it. Okay? And of course, what do they do with that charge? It comes right out of your wallet. It's always passed down to the consumer. So this is currently on gasoline and diesel. It adds around 16 or 17 cents to the price a liter at the pump. Right now, knock wood, it is not on home heating. So let's hope it stays that way. But unfortunately, the bad news is that the Trudeau government federally took a look at BC, one of the most unaffordable places on earth, and they're like, hey, let's do what they're doing, guys.
Hold my beer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Seems like a smart idea. So unfortunately, they're going to be hitting us federally with a second carbon tax next year.
Yeah, so that second carbon tax is supposed to take effect come next July 2023. And, don't take our word for it. Look at the government's own analysis. It lays it very bare who exactly is going to feel the most pain from the Trudeau government's second carbon tax. Low and middle income households, you have single mothers, people who are already living on energy poverty, and of course, our seniors who are living on fixed income are really going to feel the most pain from the second carbon tax. And there are no rebates coming with the Trudeau government second carbon tax. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to keep up the fight. We already see more pressure from some members of parliament trying to hold the government accountable over its what feels like ever increasing taxes. But we need to keep on the pressure. So whenever you get your home heating bill, your utility bill, whenever you go to the gas pumps and you get the bill coming from how much you put into your car, we'll send those bills to your members of parliament, give them a phone call and tell them enough is enough. Cut taxes now.